using social media, like I said, has been the answer, I think, of like breaking into, I guess, a male-dominated industry. And I hadn't thought about that until you said it, because I don't know. I think the way that I got into social media and photography was watching other women do it. And that's because they were on social media and they were utilizing what, women typically excel at, like an area that they're excelling, to get into an industry that they aren't as well represented in.
Shutter Stories, a Canon podcast.
Hi, I'm Ilvy and welcome to a brand new season of Shutter Stories, a Canon podcast on photography, filmmaking and content creation. If you've not heard me on this podcast before, I'm a Canon ambassador, a photojournalist and documentary maker. It's an International Women's Day special today, so let's dive in. Every year, International Women's Day has a theme, and this year's is Embracing Equity. But what does that mean? Well, equity can be described as giving everyone everything they need to be successful, as opposed to equality, which means that everyone is given the same resources regardless of their needs. And with that in mind, how does this relate to photography and content creators? Well, according to a study conducted by Women Photograph on gender representation in photography, globally around 3/4 of all photography students are women. This could be an example of achieving equality for women because unlike other industries, they are overrepresented in this subject. But when you add it to the fact that women only make up 15% of all professional photographers, you can see that as an industry, photography still lacks equity. So how can we change this? How can we achieve and embrace equity within photo direction and content creation so that future generations can have everything they need to succeed in this industry? Today, I'm going to be speaking to Vanity Fair's fashion director Nicole Chapateau and a content creator thriving on photography TikTok, Rosie Lug, about their own journeys as well as what we can do going forward to embrace equity in the direction of photo shoots and content creation.
Thanks so much for joining.
Hello. Thanks so much for having us.
I'm so happy to have you in this show, in this episode. I'm really excited.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So, Nicole, let's start with you. You're a fashion director at Vanity Fair, which is, of course, a dream job for so many people listening now, I'm sure.
It was my dream job, so I get it.
How did it kind of come about, and what does the job entail?
I actually started my career working in architecture and then did a little shift, changed my mind, and started interning at Marie Claire magazine and just kind of worked my way through the industry, worked my way up. And my Vanity Fair job kind of happened almost on accident. I was freelancing. A former amazing boss of mine, had me on freelancing, doing someone's maternity leave, and then asked me to stay. And she ended up leaving to be the editor-in-chief of Harper's Bazaar US. Her name is Samira Nasser, and I took on her job. So it really was like all on accident. I was just supposed to be there for 3 months.
That's the way things should go. So I'm a photographer. I'm hosting this podcast, but I'm also a photographer. It'd be great to understand the relationship you have with your photographers on a shoot and how you make sure everyone on a shoot is always on the same page.
We talk about the talent that we're shooting and the direction we want to go in and really collaborate to see, what the vibe of the shoot should be, how it should look, and talk that over a lot ahead of time, and then get on set and everything just happens. And we also work with the talent to see what they're feeling, what they want to portray, because a lot of what we do at Vanity Fair is really like showing people's personality at just like a very heightened level.
Yeah, I think that's really important. So let's just go back one step. What does the job actually entail?
On a day-to-day basis, I feel like it's like meetings. We're talking about the next issue. We're trying to figure out the visual aesthetic. So my job as a fashion director is to see where fashion plays a role in that. And sometimes it is about just, say if we're shooting a politician, just making sure that they look recognizable and look like themselves. And then sometimes it could be a musician and we want to like dive into this fantasy world with them. Like, for example, we had this really great shoot with Lizzo and learned that she, used to be in a punk band. So for our cover shoot, we played into that. So there's just lots of talking about like every visual aspect in the magazine. If there's a person in it, there's usually clothes on them. So we talk about that, whether fashion needs to be called in to style the celebrity or whether or not we want them to wear their own clothing and what that should look like. So there's, people are clothed in general for our magazine. So we're talking about all of that and how it should look and how it'll tie in through the whole issue. And, we're also thinking about what was in the issue before and what's in the issue coming next. So that way there's just some visual diversity. And I go to Fashion Week. I meet with, designers. I meet with the PR to just see what's new and fresh out there. And it's fun. It's a great job.
Yeah, it really sounds like it.
So, Rosie, hello to you too. Thanks so much for being here.
Hello.
Well, you're a content creator, photographer.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to know, how did this combination kind of come about? I'm also, wait, before we start that, I'm actually curious if you call yourself a content creator or a photographer.
I always struggle with this. I call myself a photographer and content creator, but like photographer comes first because that's sort of the angle I go at it from. But I think as soon as you involve content creator, it becomes a lot more personal and it means that I'm sort of in front of the camera sometimes. So I feel like that covers all bases and it's very like sort of self-explanatory. So that's what I go with. But I don't know which one I am more anymore because they kind of meld into the two. I think like Nicole, it sort of all happened like by mistake. Like it's all sort of, tumbled into itself and become what it is now. And I have no idea what that is. I'm just kind of rolling with it.
Well, you're doing a great job. So when did it all start?
So I have always loved like film and anything sort of creative. So I guess like the classic line of since I could like hold a camera. But photography wise, I got into it in lockdown. It was sort of like my lockdown hobby. And I guess the way that you connected with people then was online. So I was posting it online and just ended up connecting with a lot of people that I didn't expect to. And I guess that's sort of where it all started, like the content creation started. And then like short form video became a thing, which combined my love of like film and photography together. So it started in lockdown and it's sort of gone from there, the photography side of things.
Within your content creating, there's a lot of diversity in the content you create.
Yeah.
You are extremely creative. There's a lot out there.
Oh, thank you.
In the things that you are making, you are, I think, more drawn towards photography, but I don't know, it's a combination of the two, or how would you?
So I'm not into like, I guess, the classic videography. Like I don't know the first thing when it comes to actual, like professional videography. So I am predominantly a photographer. But I think the way that social media is now, it's like short form videos is a thing. And I absolutely love, I think the like overall term I would give myself is a storyteller, because you're sort of telling stories with your photography and telling stories with your portraits and stuff like that. But also I like to tell the story of the behind the scenes and offer sort of the backstory of everything. And I think that's a lot of where the creativity comes in, because actually bringing a story to life takes a lot more of creativity than, just taking the pictures.
Yeah. No, it does. I know. Yeah. So the theme of International Women's Day this year is embracing equity, which is basically the concept of giving everyone the specific tools they need to succeed, regardless of their background. So I'm interested to hear from both of you, actually, what does gender equity mean to you, and how have you experienced it in your industry?
It's really interesting because I've spent most of my career working in an industry where it's dominated by women. So I've had mostly, for the most part, women managers, women bosses, women editor-in-chiefs. So I think it's something I think about mostly as a Black woman, to make sure that I am, making the same pay as someone else in my field and my title, and having the same opportunities, and also having the same opportunities given to me in a way that will benefit someone else, opening the doors, bringing people in, and just doing all of that. So it's it's been interesting because I did move from architecture, which I was only doing it for a few years, but it was male dominated. And I remember at the time my salary, I was so excited. I think I made like $20,000 or $25,000 a year. And I was like, whoa, rich. But really, then I found out like my counterpart was making like 3 times as much. And I was like, what?
That's so unfair.
It's so unfair. And I just think like there's a great shift to making sure that women have equity in the workplace. There's still so many things to be done to rectify that. I mean, I still see it happen all the time where I'm like, wow, she should really be making a lot more. But I think things like, having to disclose what the salary is for job postings in New York has been a really great thing. And people should talk, like really just talk about like, hey, I make this much money.
Yeah.
Make it not a big deal. Yeah, especially women. Women need to talk to each other. And that is one of the first things I did before accepting a job was ask the person who had it before me and the person before them just to see like where is it going, what they're doing, and using their knowledge to help me advocate for myself.
I never did that. I've been in this industry, which is totally male dominated, the photojournalism world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Getting
I was
better
say
now.
that.
And I think especially talking about how much did you get for that assignment? Oh, are they also paying this and this for you? Like I really had to figure a lot of things out myself throughout the years. But now it's becoming more and more normal to kind of meet up with women and there are several organizations where female photographers come together and we talk about this stuff. Like, oh, really? Are you making this? I'm making this. Oh, wow, there's a big difference. Okay, what's going on?
That's so interesting to hear about the fact that you meet up with other photographers to talk about prices, because I remember when I was starting out, I tried to reach out to photographers, even female photographers, and people were really closed off about what they earn and everything. It felt like it was almost a taboo subject that I was asking people. But I think with like jobs that you're applying to, like you said, where the salary is on display before you even go for the job, is such a incredible thing to have. And it's so much tougher with like freelance, I think, because you technically set your own price and you don't have anything to compare it to, because everyone's like doing their own thing. There's no sort of job set title, especially as soon as it comes to like content creation as well. So I think that's really important that it's on display. I wish we had something like that within like the freelance sort of industry, because it's so sort of airy-fairy and everyone's doing their own individual thing. It almost feels like that's not really an accessible thing. And mine was the opposite. Like you just said, Ilvy, that in like the photography industry, I sort of go off like the representation of it, and there are way more men within the industry than there are women. So I'm jealous, Nicole, that you got to be surrounded by women, like incredible women, and like look up to them, because the only women I ever saw were sort of online. And whenever I did any sort of, I guess like work experience or anything in real life per se, it was with men. And like I never had like a actual woman to ask questions to and like to learn from.
I also feel, I don't know, in the photojournalism world, there were so very few women, kind of the same you are describing now. And what happened, this is years ago, it's really much, much better now, mostly because there are many of these female photographers networks. We have Women Photograph, which is a very big network of female photographers. So that helped. But what happened, let's say, I would say about 8 years ago, is that few women who were working very hard were making it through. We were making it. But then there were so very few spots for us that the women were also kind of fighting each other, because we were like, hey, and that's horrible. That's a horrible position to be in. And I think a lot of us felt the same way, kind of like, oh, we made it, so I have to keep going and I have to kind of keep pushing. And the pushing also caused you to push away other women sometimes. And you saw that happening a lot. And it was a horrible contest, kind of. It's
like competition over community, isn't it?
Yeah, we have a saying, we call it crabs in a barrel, how they're always climbing on top of each other to get out.
Yeah.
We're really, we don't need to act like this. And crabs actually don't live in a barrel.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, in the end of they don't. So like, don't do that. And if we just work together, we can get rid of this mentality that like, I need to be the only woman. I need to make sure I'm in this space and I'm getting all of the jobs. And it happens a lot to, you know, minority communities, whether it's by race or by gender.
Yeah, definitely. It is changing bit by bit.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. So what other issues have you faced in your industries when it comes to equity?
I mean, I would say as a Black woman, it's things have been changing, but there are still changes that need to be made to make sure that is better representation. Like I even look at designers, and I was saying the other day, and I was like, wow, like this is great. There's so many Black designers, but like, you know, there's a lot of Black men in the forefront, and like, where are the Black women designers? Like we need to get behind them. We need to, you know, seek them out while they're in school and not just like in college studying to be fashion designers. Pique their interest when they're in high school, like finding out what kids are into. I think it's really important that you start there. You see that, you know, having more mentorship programs in schools, especially in public school systems, and just seeing, you know, like building their character and letting them know like, hey, there's other things. I feel like when I was a kid, it was like, there's other things besides being a marine biologist. Like, you don't have to be a doctor or a lawyer or a teacher. Like, you can be creative and be successful at it and just, you know, stirring it up there.
I think a lot of it is like representation, like just seeing people like you. I think that's sort of it. Like for me, it was literally watching female photographers do their thing that inspired me to do it. And if I hadn't have seen that, then I wouldn't be where I am. So I think that the people that are doing it first are the, you know, sort of the leaders, and there's so much to say for that. But I think, yeah, it just comes down to the representation and like seeing a big like array of different people doing the same thing. I think that's what's important, like seeing that it's not just a stereotypical group of people that would do like a job and that, you know, anyone can do it.
Yeah. Beautifully said. It's so true. We need to see different examples. So,
yeah,
Rosie, I'm very jealous of your Instagram following, as I said. So tell me, you really built up a brilliant following for yourself, and at a very young age. How do you think social media helped you gain work, especially maybe in the earlier days of the...
I mean, I wouldn't have work if it wasn't for social media. Like social media changed everything. I think not only from like a booking client's point of view, but also from a sort of motivation and inspiration to keep going. Like I'm so inspired by every single person that's within the community and for the right reason. And it is such an inspiring and uplifting community, the creative community, especially photographers. There's just so much space for growth, and it is like community over competition, like we were saying earlier. It's got such a nice feeling to it. So I mean, social media is pinnacle for me. I used to put all my focus into TikTok because when that became a thing, that was like the answer to everything. And like the first sort of tiny percentage of my following were trickling over from TikTok. And everyone was convinced that Instagram was dead. And then I started posting on Reels, and that's sort of where the Instagram followings come from. So that's like the last few months. So I actually haven't sort of wrapped my head around it either. And I think it's crazy because Instagram is such a, like the community on Instagram is so much more engaged. Like everyone on Instagram is it's so much more personal because you've got stories and it's a lot more conversational. TikTok is sort of just to reach the masses. And then Instagram, I think, is where you sort of get to know them. So yeah, no, it's really exciting. And I wouldn't have any of my work, any of my like brand work, my client work, I wouldn't have met any of the amazing people that I've met if it wasn't for social media. And that was even before like a slightly bigger following. Obviously I've met more people from it because that's just the way it works. But when it was smaller as well, I think just putting yourself out there, and like as soon as you have a page that people can look at and they can sort of glean a little bit of who you are from it, that's sort of where it goes from there. That's the power of social media, and I think it's incredible.
Yeah, it's so personal. People really want to know, who are you, like the person behind being a photographer.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
that's kind of where I went off the track, because I was like, I'm not showing my personal life. I'm only I'm only showing my pictures. That's enough for you guys. Like the followers, you know me as a photographer, so you're gonna see photography.
Yeah.
And then I noticed, okay, I think people just really want to see who's behind that camera too.
It is so easy to get addicted to it though. My mum said, Rosie, you're now taking pictures of your breakfast. Like, this has gone too far. People don't care about your granola, okay? Like, it's okay.
Oh, goodness. So, okay, I'm gonna come up here with a few percentages which really shocked me actually when I read them. The first one is for Rosie. Statista found that 84% of Instagram influencers globally are women. How do you think you've used a space where women are dominating to achieve success in an industry where women are underrepresented?
Well, first of all, I think the reason for that is because there are more women consumers. I think my audience is like 97% female. So I think definitely like the most people that engage personally, that will like send a message or comment or anything, the most people that show their faces are women. So I think it comes from that, because at the end of the day, an influencer is someone that influences, and a woman, I guess, is more likely to influence another woman than they are a male. But I obviously get some like male photographers that are interested in my stuff. So I guess that's sort of where that spirals off. But yeah, I think using social media, like I said, has been the answer, I think, of like breaking into, I guess, a male-dominated industry. And I hadn't thought about that until you said it, because I don't know. I think the way that I got into social media and photography was watching other women do it. And that's because they were on social media and they were utilizing what, women typically excel at, like an area that they're excelling, to get into an industry that they aren't as well represented in. And I think also the people that I follow, like men and women, do it very, very differently. We have a very, very different approach to social media, which is so interesting. And obviously that's generalizing. Like, obviously there are people that do it different ways and everyone does it differently. But yeah, I enjoy the way women create, and I enjoy the way I create. And I know that speaks to a lot more women than it speaks to men, which is probably why I get a lot more female clients than men. I can't remember the last time I took pictures of a man.
Yeah, I saw that on your Insta feed. So Nicole, we could also talk about the fact that according to a study by McKinsey and Oxford Economics, that women spend 226% more than men on fashion, despite running only 14% of the top fashion companies. We are seeing a change in the tide of representation, though, with 51.2% of magazine covers in 2021 featuring people of color, according to the Fashion Spot. And I'm wondering if you feel we are moving in the right direction.
I think we're moving in the right direction. I mean, it's already too slow. Like, whenever I see something, they're like, this is the first time a woman has done this. And I'm like, why? It's 2023. So I think it's too slow, but, progress is progress, and I will take it for the most part. I think there's certain aspects we could be a little bit more progressive on, but I definitely think with magazine covers, that from my childhood and like falling in love with magazines, I basically would wait for there to be a cover of Naomi Campbell to see representation, or perhaps a celebrity, but it wasn't a lot. And I would have to look at Essence or Ebony or Jet or maybe like Vibe magazine to see people who look like me. And every once in a while, you'd see a person of color on like a Vogue or a Vanity Fair, Glamour, all of those magazines. So now I feel like the shift is really great. I see it all the time. And it's almost like, I think like on a monthly basis, if you group all of the magazines together from all the publishers and independent, you'll see a great amount of diversity. Whereas before, you'd see like probably 5% people of color on the cover. And now I think it's really more like, it seems like 50-50. Sometimes I'm like, wow, people of color have swept the September issues this
That's
year.
Beautiful.
So it's like a little joke. So I think it's a beautiful thing, and I think it'll only progress, especially with newer, like younger generations. I have 2 kids. One is almost 13 they're very, and I think it's like maybe because they're being raised by like Gen X or like older, a little bit younger, they're just very much proud of themselves and they want to see people who look like them, and their friends are diverse. They're just out there making sure they get what they want. So, which I think is great. So I think like maybe in another 10 years, it'll be even better.
I really hope so. And the way it's going, I think it really, really will be. You see, the change has been so big in the last 5 years, 4 years even, maybe. It's yeah, I hope it's going to continue like this. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I think the most drastic change came in 2020. You know, in the US, we were protesting for our rights. We were fighting for our lives a lot. And I think there was like a wake-up call to people to be like, you need to look and pay attention. And you can't just be like, doesn't affect me, so I'm not going to look. And I think there's more people in positions now that are able to make change, and people are wanting to make change within the creative field. Not everywhere.
And Nicole, how does it feel when you give a platform to others through your work? I saw you styled the Black Lives Matter activist for Vanity Fair as part of the You Said Hope series.
It was just appropriate. It was affecting all of us. It's still affecting all of us. And we wanted to talk about it and shed another light on it. And it was a beautiful experience. It was also like right in the middle of COVID. So, you know, photo shoots were not how they used to be. I think I styled a portfolio from my living room. I never once left the house. Everyone I talked to was over Zoom, and just really just making an impact.
That's really beautiful that you were able to be part of that.
And we got to use so many photographers. Like, it was like a dream. Like, oh my gosh, all these people that we might not have usually worked with, getting to work with them and then starting to develop relationship with them. I think that issue for us really opened up doors for us to work with other photographers.
But I mean, in the photojournalism world, 2020 was also a big year, I think, for everyone in the creative industry and in the world in general, maybe. And it changed so much, and it was so welcome. And yeah, the time was really there. I mean, there was no other way. The Black Lives Matter movement was really moving forward, and it really changed the photojournalism world as well for the better, and I hope it keeps changing. So when you work with subjects from different backgrounds, how do you kind of ensure that everyone feels comfortable and welcome at a shoot? Do you have certain conversations beforehand? Or
I can talk to anyone about anything all the time, so I just like to talk and see like what you're interested. I also, like, if I'm styling, I will Google image search the heck out of somebody and like dive into their Instagram and just trying to find out more about their personality.
Mm-hmm.
And then on set, it's about talking and really understanding and listening. The shoot is not about me. It's about the talent and what they want to be and what they want to portray. And just, it's really like just connecting with someone and making them feel good. Because that's what it's about. Yeah. It's about them on the shoot.
Yeah, it's lovely how you kind of keep that conversation open and that people, it's like a collaboration more than what, yeah, exactly, more than just created from one side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always saying, like, it's not going to hurt my feelings. I was like, I might be sad if you don't want to wear this look that I thought was like going to be perfect, but it's not going to hurt my feelings. I'm like, let's just keep it going.
That's great. Oh, your job just sounds amazing.
Literally, I'm so jealous.
I can too. It's just beautiful. So, Rosie, to get back to you, I saw you recently did a series on your acne. What was the response to that? I saw there were many. I mean, when you look at how many people saw that video and how many people liked it, there must have been a great response to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you post vulnerable videos like that are you without sort of any sort of filter, you get a lot of direct messages as well, which is really magical because it opens up so many conversations you never thought you would have. So I loved that side of it. But on like the surface, as soon as a video gets gets outside of, I guess, the photography community, because the people that follow me are all interested in what I'm posting. So they're obviously going to be supportive and really, really nice about it. as soon as it gets sort of outside of that, of like people that might not understand it or might have never seen anything like it, or people that just like to have an opinion, which is quite a few people online, that's when I think it becomes, it can get quite negative. But the strange thing with like the acne photo shoot was basically I took self-portraits of myself without any makeup on because I'd had like a small breakout, and I used to really suffer with acne, like quite badly when I was younger. I know that this wasn't bad on my sort of standards compared to what I had when I was younger, but I'd never seen anyone do that before, and I wish I'd seen something like that when I was suffering, 5 years ago. So that's sort of why I did it for my younger self, and it definitely reached people that I was hoping it would reach, which was amazing. But people will comment on anything. I think someone even said that my skin wasn't even that bad, and they like went into it and were like really angry about the fact that I was taking pictures of skin that wasn't even that bad. I will always find comments on social media interesting. I find it entertaining now. And it's interesting as well that different platforms give different responses. Like Instagram, like I said, is more of a community, so it was a lot more friendly. TikTok, if you get to large audiences, can be quite harsh, but normally is quite nice. YouTube Shorts, on the other hand, which is like this new upcoming thing, because I think it's so much less personal and YouTube Shorts just come up like to anyone, you get a lot more negativity on there. So I think you just have to sort of take everything with a pinch of salt. And I really, really enjoyed the response. I always think that, yes, it's exciting reaching, thousands of people online, maybe even millions. Like it is exciting. But I think the most exciting thing is when someone will message you and you get a paragraph about how it's changed their day or changed their perspective on something, or it's like genuinely affected them or helped them. Like that's the most rewarding thing. So I'm so happy with the response because I got a few people that said that it genuinely helped them. So that's what I do it for, and that was a really good response.
Beautiful.
For me.
Wow, being vulnerable like that in front of a camera, in front of such a big audience is I can imagine scary, but well.
Yeah, I mean, selfishly, it's really confidence building as well. Like I never used to leave the house without, an outfit that I was like happy to leave the house in, and I would like wear makeup and stuff, like a classic teenage girl that hasn't quite got enough self-confidence to do things like that, which now as like I'm only 21, but looking back I'm like, that's so silly. And I think genuinely it's like self-portraits and putting myself online and talking to a camera like no one's listening, and then actually quite a few people listen and respond, can build your confidence in ways that I don't think many other things can. And I think it's just so, especially when you do it authentically, it's so powerful to put yourself out online just for others to see. Even if sometimes you get negative feedback, it's so worth what you gain from it.
Nicole, I'd also love to understand how you identify with the shoots you work on. How does that manifest in how you see yourself as a person and a fashion director?
I don't see myself in the shoots. It's very separate. I don't know, it just feels like creating art. So, and it doesn't necessarily reflect me as a person for shoots, but I love them. I also I'll get like a negative feedback on like, why does your hair look like that? Or why are the shoes that? I don't like that. And it's just like, whatever. People will just be mean. I don't really let it faze me. It just, right. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I actually didn't like those shoes either. Like, go. Like, I think it's like when you engage in it, it puts fuel in the fire, and they're waiting. They're like, there's someone there who is like sitting at home. You don't know what they're going through, just like they don't know what you're going through. And at that moment, they want to engage. And if you don't, then it just kind of bursts their bubble. So that's how I handle it. I don't want to participate. I don't want to participate. I mean, sometimes I'll laugh at them and be like, oh man, that was actually really funny. Like, you have to laugh at yourself. And it's really interesting the way people feel like they can speak to you on social media that they would never say to your face because they know it's horribly mean. So I just feel like if they can't say it, they're not saying it to my face, I don't need to say anything back for the most part.
So always people with no profile either, like always people that are hiding.
Yeah, they don't exist.
Yeah.
True. So something I'm also keen to discuss is image rights, particularly for women, actually. So, Nicole, how do you kind of make sure that subjects are represented in a context that they are comfortable with, especially when it's a cover? That's nerve-wracking, I can imagine. When they don't own the rights to that image, it's actually something I'm dealing in with my work a lot too.
My job on styling a shoot or being on set is just to make sure that the person feels good. And if they feel good, they can take a look in the mirror. We also will sit there and look with the photographer, look through the photos and being respectful and being like, how do you feel about this? Like, do you feel like this represents you? And everyone on our team does that. And, we even have lots of times where we're shooting things that are sheer and do you want your nipples to be shown? Or just everyone has their things. So they're like, we've had talent be like, no, nipples are real and I have them. Please don't edit them out. Or, hey, today I wasn't feeling my best self and, brighten me up a little bit. You have to just really listen to people because you don't want them feeling bad. And especially if they're the subject of the image and they don't have any control over it. They've agreed to do it. So you don't want them seeing it later on feeling like, I wish I never did that shoot. You want them to be like, I can't wait to do another shoot with them. That's what you want the feeling to be. Yes,
that's so important. I've had it the other way around where I was portrayed in a way, it wasn't a cover, lucky me, but it was inside a magazine and you just open up the magazine and you think, oh no, how did this happen? Yeah, so I know, I'm very happy to hear that that's on top of the priority list, in the way you work at shoots. So Rosie, there has been a lot of discussion around image rights in recent years, also with some pretty high-profile paparazzi cases, seeing people being sued for posting images of themselves to social media that they didn't actually have the rights to. So how do you think this kind of affects the progression of achieving equity?
I think with paparazzi, it's such a tough thing. I find, when you get those paparazzi videos online of celebrities that really don't want to be having their picture taken and yeah, I find that really hard to watch, especially as a photographer, because I find that I would never take a picture of someone if they were uncomfortable with me taking it. So from a photographer's point of view, I'm sort of, I actually don't know how I feel about paparazzi because I understand that it's a way people make a living and I understand that it's a job. And I also understand that consumers want to see these pictures. But yeah, I don't think I agree with it, but I don't think I'm in a position to put that to rights because I have no idea how I would. But yeah, no, going back to what Nicole said, I think it's so important that the person that's having their picture taken is comfortable. And I think I've learned that a lot from self-portraits because I feel really uncomfortable with someone else taking my picture a lot of the time. But I'm so comfortable taking my own, which tells me that as soon as the power's in my hand, it's so important that that person feels like I'm capturing them in a way that they're comfortable. So as far as image rights go, I get that the photographer owns the picture and I have a contract that says I own the pictures and you can post them, but you can't do much else with them because I took it and it's my work. But then that's the harsh contract that I think you have to have that protects both sides, and that's the paperwork side of it, which I hate. But then the actual, person to person side, we're all human and we all understand that there are pictures of us that we don't like and there are pictures of us that we love. So when I send a picture to someone or when I send a gallery to a client or a person that I've shot with, I'll say I'll make a favorites folder and then I can see the type of photos that you like and then I'll bear that in mind when I'm posting them. So there's this sort of understanding. So I've never personally had an issue with image rights and stuff like that with when there's been a contract involved. So as long as there's an understanding beforehand and then the personal side comes in where everyone's comfortable and everyone's happy with the situation, you're fine.
And in general, I guess this is to both of you. How do you think we can all embrace equity in photography and content creation going forward?
I think we're going in the right way. I definitely do. I think, with everything that needs change, and to just, when you need to disrupt the norm, there's always going to be a few steps forward, like a step back, and then you gain some more footage. But I definitely think I've been doing this for like almost 20 years. I see a lot of progress. Like it's
I wonder
drastically
what this
better.
episode would have sounded like, let's say, 7 years ago. I think we would have been like, well, maybe, well, where are we going? And look at all three of us are like, yeah, I agree.
I think the way social media has gone has opened up so much more conversation. Like when you were talking about the Black Lives Matter movement before, it opened up so many conversations, but literally through social media, because obviously you're not meeting up with people. It was during lockdown or like coming out of lockdown. I think we had harsher rules, so I was still stuck in my house. But I was having so many more conversations about literally everything with so many people I never thought I'd have conversations with. And I think that's happening in every area. And I think it's such an incredible thing. Like there's just so much conversation going on, and that's the way social media has changed, and also the way the world's changing. I think people are so much more open to new perspectives and learning about different people, and the world's just getting smaller, and everyone's sort of learning more about everything else that's going on. I think it's incredible. I mean, we're nowhere near where we want to be, but we are definitely moving in the right direction there.
Yeah, we are. I feel the same way. So finally, and as it's International Women's Day, I'd love to also hear about the women that inspire you both. They might be friends or someone famous. Who inspires you?
I will have to say my grandmother was my biggest inspiration. She was a stay-at-home mother. She had 6 kids. They were all like basically a year apart.
Oh, wow.
And she helped raise, I think my grandparents had like over 20 or 30 grandchildren. She was always in everyone's life. Like it became like as she got older, her wardrobe was like everyone's college sweatshirt.
Oh.
And I just thought she was like such, always. That's what she wore, college sweatshirts and like a beautiful pant. Like she always looked so put together and ran everything. And I think that oftentimes, especially for her generation, you are overlooked as just like, oh, you just sit at home and you're like eating bonbons all day. Like to run her household, I think is such an accomplishment. And to have children. She took care of my grandfather. Like she just was a really strong woman, and going through, just being a woman and of that time and all the things that she had to fight up against, you would never know it by looking at her. And she was always just impeccably dressed. And it's probably why I love fashion. Like I would come home and she would watch me after school and I'm like, my grandmother is sitting there like in a suit ironing towels. Like, who are you? She was just like, it's just like another generation of people. I was always impressed by her. It was incredible.
Wow, she sounds amazing. It's amazing. Wow, beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. That's beautiful. And you, Rosie, who would it be for you?
Mine's the same. Like I think I've got so many incredible women in my family. Like I'm so lucky to be surrounded by women that are just so powerful and so sure in what they do. I'm constantly inspired by all of them. My mum was a single mum, so she sort of raised my sister and I. And I look back, and at the time I didn't notice any differences. But now I look back and I'm like, she did so many things to like, make it like keep us like going. She did so many things that made like life just more magical than it needed to be. Like it was just, I had a really magical childhood, and I think she doesn't work in any job that's creative, but she always made sure that there was some sort of creative spark, and she's so passionate about anyone that's passionate about anything. So I find my mum really inspirational. My nana's hilarious. Like I've just got so many women that are just incredible. There's so many unbelievable women that are in my family, and I look up to all of them. So I'm inspired by them. I'm also inspired by like I said, most of my following is women, and I'm so inspired by anyone that's willing to message and put themselves out online and have an opinion on something. And I love just having conversations about like the creative world, the way that people see things. Like I'm just so inspired by anyone that's willing to put themselves out there. So literally any woman.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, true.
Thank you.
Literally any woman. Every woman.
I love that. I really, really, really love that. And it's so true. It's the same for me. I'm inspired by so many of them in the family, famous women. And yeah, it's amazing to be able to look at them and feel for yourself like, hey, I can do this too. I can be strong, and Now, thanks so much to both of you for sharing all that you shared, and especially this last part where you shared something very personal. That's really beautiful. And thank you so much for making this episode so lovely, and for sharing this with the listeners. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us the space.
And that's it for this episode of Shatter Stories. Thank you for joining us to kick off our new season. And for those of you celebrating, happy International Women's Day. We look forward to welcoming you again next month for the next episode. Until then, follow us on our social channels, which you can find in the description of the podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, follow, and give us a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform. See you next time.
Shutter Stories, a Canon podcast.